Welcome to Socialcast, your go-to place to learn about marketing, the latest social media news, and insights. Brought to you by Social Bakers.
In this next podcast episode, we bring you Brian Solis, an industry-leading analyst, an author of many books on technology, and a thought leader in the space of literally everything digital. Brian is one of the most future-thinking thinkers that we've spoken to. We briefly touch on his new book, Lifescale, how to live a more creative, productive, and happy life. And our discussion is exactly on this topic. How can we actually create brand experiences that lead to happier lives for our customers? Without further ado, let's begin. Well, Brian, welcome to our podcast. It's so good to finally have you on. And we've been trying to get you on our podcast for a while. We've been trying to get you to come on some of our events, and we're going to get there. But now we have you on the podcast.
I'm looking forward to all of it. And it's really great to be here. It's been fun having our conversations back and forth in email, but now I get to put a face to the name and we get to do this live. Yeah.
You a year ago, you were doing one thing. Now you have published your book, Lifescale, How to Live a More Creative, Productive, and Overall Happy Life, which is something that I would like to learn to do better for sure.
I think we all would. I will tell you though that in the last year, it's been a very interesting journey. Not only that, I also branched out on my own to start doing more independent research and advisory with tech companies and enterprise vendors, and also brands to help everyone better understand how to navigate the new world of digital transformation and digital Darwinism. So Lifescale was a really interesting sort of, let's just say, a turn away from my everyday focus. And it was a necessary turn because I found that I was actually trying to write the follow-up to this book, which was X. And I just couldn't get there. And a lot of it had to do with the realization that, these things have an impact on our day-to-day life that is now just starting to be understood. But for a good 2 years there, I studied actually a lot of stuff that didn't exist to get answers. Number one, what was happening to us? And then number two, what to do about it so that I could get back on track. And I'll tell you one last thing. And it's been an interesting journey in that the process of discovery is only relatable to people who feel like there's something amiss. But for the most part, I've learned, it's counterintuitive, but I've learned that most people are quite content with being distracted until there's an event where they realize that they need to fix something. So it's been a very interesting last couple of years, I'll just say.
Right. Well, you just mentioned that you deal with a lot of this, the tech companies or just the companies in general that are trying to deal with new technology. I think the book, to some degree, is also, it's really written for the end user, the consumer of a lot of this technology, right? But for this podcast, we'd be really curious to know of how this tech actually impacts the businesses, how we should, as marketers, start thinking of this technology. What is actually our responsibility when we create our marketing campaigns? And maybe a place to start would be to ask if you could describe, so what is this point in history that we found ourselves sort of caught in from maybe a consumer point of view and also someone who would be working on the business side, on the marketing side?
I really like the way that you set that up for a couple of reasons. One is I'll answer the second question first, which is our relationship with technology, our personal relationship with technology it's quite transformative, literally transformative. So for example, it's accelerating our brain, it's rewiring our neural pathways. It's releasing a whole bunch of different chemicals in our body as we engage with technology that our body becomes dependent upon. So how we think and how we operate, how we feel, these are all things that are just evolving as our relationship with technology continues to evolve. So this is why, for example, we can't put our phone down. This is why we're continuously scrolling. This is why we're constantly feeding off of attention. And it's happened over the course of the better part of a decade. So it wasn't anything that's been overnight. It's been a long time brewing. It only matters if you need to do things that challenge how your brain and your body are being rewired. So, for example, in my case, it was creativity and deep work and the ability to give something or someone my full attention in any given moment on demand. That's where I and many were struggling. So I wrote the book as a means of getting rewired in a productive direction that isn't about going to analog first. It's actually becoming a hybrid between digital and analog, because it's not like we're going to abandon technology, and it's not like it's going to go away overnight. But with that said, that entire journey has now come back into my work full circle, which is as a marketer or as an executive. If you go on the Lifescale journey, you will by design gain a greater level of empathy. You'll change for the better, but you'll also get a great level of empathy for your customer or your stakeholder, because then you'll understand what they don't know yet. And this is really important, because when it comes to marketing, for example, I mean, look, I know it's a long answer, but this is my first consumer-facing book, right? All of my books in the past have been about business. They've been written for executives. I am now adapting the narrative around the marketing of the book to answer your question specifically, because I'm never going to be Tony Robbins. I've got a lot of research to do. I have a lot of help to give to businesses and marketers and executives. So the new narrative for the book is your customer is incredibly distracted. And when you are marketing to that customer, you can no longer think just creatively or just thinking about the power of the platforms. You now have to be empathetic and understand that their brain is rewired. They feed off of these chemicals that come as a result of their interactions in the devices. They're moving in these incredible micro moments. They feel angst. They feel stress as they go through the customer journey. They feel like most brands and most marketers don't understand them. We live in a world of GDPR and data integrity and privacy, where a lot of these things are being challenged. So now we have to think differently about how we engage them, how we use their data, how we deliver value. So what I actually believe now is that those who go on the Lifescale journey can understand how to deliver greater value in any one moment around the customer journey, whether that's marketing before, during, or after a transaction, whether that's a loyalty loop, whether that's just building relationships or community development. The game is different now.
And does that mean, so if you have to empathize with a customer, as you said, and you sort of put yourself in their shoes and you realize how overwhelmed they are, and a lot of the tactics that maybe marketers use today are really reliant on the system one sort of tactics. And are you saying that maybe we should consider system two, or maybe what is our responsibility as the marketers who are creating these campaigns, who are sort of trying to play in the system, maybe sometimes game it?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've always said that there's two ways to change behaviors. One is to manipulate engagement. The other way is to inspire it. And I think a lot of the behavior change that we see as a result of our relationship with technology has been manipulated. It's called persuasive design. It's an intentional series of design acts that change our behaviors. I don't know that they went in there thinking how negatively they were going to change us. They just wanted to change our behavior, because on these devices, attention is a currency, right? And that's how they monetize the platforms. But with that said, I think the universal truth as marketers, or just as businesses in general, that we have to accept is that we have changed, and that there are things happening inside of us that we don't necessarily, know about or acknowledge, because it's not widely known yet, but we have changed. So understanding that universal truth, it's then challenging yourself as a marketer to say, how is my customer distracted? What is my customer feeling? And how can I deliver value that they value? Right? Because value is in the eye of the beholder. And this is where the game really starts to change, right? So we have access to unprecedented levels of data. We have to organize around that data differently, but we also have to be intentional about how we're going to extract those insights. And then more importantly, act on them. So I'll give you an example. When someone is, let's say, open to engagement, wherever they are in the journey, everything around that decision is what's causing the chaos in their life, whether that's politics, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's just simple stress or anxiety from feeling FOMO, or just constantly just the being on edge because of all of the notifications that are coming. So you have to think about this. Science or data shows that when a customer is actually shopping, they have a great deal of stress already. Then what's happening is that marketers are actually adding to that stress because the journey itself isn't delivering any kind of reprieve. So the touch points are dated, the touch points are complicated, the touch points are not friendly or intuitive, working for this brain, right? Um, they're not integrated, so step to step to step is kind of broken. Too much information, too many choices, not understanding their preferences, or using machine learning, for example, for personalization. So you already have a lot of stuff working against you, and here we are as the bright and shiny marketer trying to get your attention. And that's the empathy that I'm talking about, is understanding what and how someone's feeling and what they're trying to do. Marketing now can become essentially the light in
Mm-hmm.
what is darkness today. So I believe that marketers now have a tremendous opportunity to understand what someone's feeling, what someone's trying to do, and then just start to design marketing and engagement and touch points, essentially experiences that give someone reprieve and gives someone like a great feeling of, wow, that was nice.
Yeah, I love how positive this sort of message is. I mean, this is really truly caring about your customers. This is what it means. But what do you do if let's say you are a CMO in a marketing department and you want to understand whether this is an actual problem? What are the indicators that actually you're not thinking about this maybe sometimes, or as much as you should?
I feel, to talk about empathy, I feel for CMOs quite a bit, because we're watching in real time the role of the CMO change quite dramatically. In fact, one of the things I've been meaning to write, if I can ever get around to it, is the changing expectations of that role. And is it something that is only solvable by a CMO, or are we now looking at the need for complementary roles in terms of digital growth, experience?
Right.
So what we have, before I kind of set up to answer the question, is in the last 3 weeks, 9 major brands have had CMOs exit, and that's just in the last few weeks. And I think what the unsaid story is that there's just too great of a burden. They are taxed with driving growth, driving digital, driving engagement, driving experiences, driving product development, and data. Right now, you have to build a new organization around data. So it's a great task. So to answer your question, I think you have to, in order to be successful, focus on where you're going to have the greatest amount of success. I've heard time and time again, whether this is the answer, but time and time again, organizing around data is actually what starts to drive everything else. So data, for example, if you look at the customer journey, if you look at the micro moments today where things are, say, not performing well. In fact, who said that? I once heard, I think it's the VP over at HomeAway. He said something like, success isn't about what we need to do. Success is about what we shouldn't do. And what he meant by that was, we shouldn't just look at all of these opportunities to do new and greater things for marketing. We should also look at all of these tools that we have to fix what's broken. And where he focused was data showed where things weren't converting well, like what we talked about: broken touch points, broken steps, not understanding or zero personalization of sort of what someone was trying to do or what they were looking for. Just fixing those things actually helped. I can't even remember. It was a stat that was in the hundreds of percent of growth that yielded by fixing those problems. So they gave data a purpose. They gave marketing a purpose. And essentially it was an empathetic approach of saying, oh, you're struggling. You're not finding what you need, so you're leaving. How about if we change that?
Yeah. So I suppose it's sort of like customer churn would be a really huge indicator that something is broken in that customer journey, right? Imagine.
It's such a good point, right? We've known this. I mean, come on now. E-commerce is what, 20 something years old now. I mean, this is we've known this for a long time, and we keep focusing on the wrong metrics. We're looking at abandonment, we're looking at conversions, we're looking at NPS, we're looking at moments, but we're not looking at outcomes. We're not thinking about growth metrics like CLV, for example. So I think really it's a changing mindset. So going back to your other question, I think the CMO has to think differently as a CMO, but kind of coming back to the whole conversation of empathy, essentially the customer's changing. The customer's changing as a result of the consumerization of technology, but also the prolific sort of transformation humans are going through as a result of technology. Look, for better or for worse, right? I mean, outside of marketing, people are getting their news from Facebook, and they think Facebook is a news organization. So whether that's source, they don't even care about the source. So they'll believe anything that they see just simply because it aligns with who they are or whatever their belief system is or their biases. So we live in an incredible time where even truth is difficult to ascertain.
Right.
We live in a time where truth itself is actually debatable. There's your truth, there's my truth. So I think the more that marketers can do to not, look, there's a whole nother conversation we can have about brands that take sides. But I think at the very least, brands should try to deliver an experience that's piercing through all its chaos, that helps someone, because I can tell you that that's going to be a differentiator.
Are you seeing this happen? Are there glimmers of hope, or this is just you hope that we're going to get there one day?
I mean, there's certainly. The HomeAway example is a simple but effective example to explore. I think I wrote about it. It's called Digital Experience Innovators, I think, in a report that you could download. It's on SlideShare. I have videos interviewing like 8 or 9 different CMOs that are on YouTube at briansolis.tv.
Also, we'll try to share these links with our audience for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate it, because you'll hear the stories of how people are focusing data and growth, and so it gives someone not only hope, but it's an area where to focus direction, because there's too much to do in terms of marketing and success, and the checklist of what we have to do in terms of traditional stuff and new stuff. It's overwhelming. But I think if you could create a special task team of marketers to focus on these small things, I think we're going to see wins, and not only are we going to see wins, but we're also going to start to develop both the models and the expertise that are going to be necessary to sort of keep that growth happening.
That's I think there's a lot more that probably you could add to the story, but I know that, Brian, you're in a hurry, and perhaps you could just outline for the audience where they can follow you. Where would be the best places to catch up with what you're doing?
Well, I appreciate that. Look, I'll leave you with a few things. One is really start to challenge convention. This is a time where we have a confluence of iteration, which is taking all this new technology and doing the same things better, which is important, and also an opportunity for innovation, which is taking all these new things and using them to deliver new value, which is also important. I think that the combination of the two is how we have to define sort of our work and our sense of purpose. Where are we going to add value? But I think we should also challenge ourselves in thinking, I could approach it this way, and that's one way. Can I approach this also creatively? And the answer in terms of guidance is looking at the customer, looking at the data, looking at the challenges and the problems that they have or their aspirations, and let that inspire you. That's going to direct you in terms of where you want to go or where you can go. Now, as for following me, my website is briansolis.com. I think I'm Brian Solis across the board. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And I look forward to engaging you. And if you want to learn more about experience design, well, I got a couple books on that, X and What's the Future. And then, of course, the new one is Lifescale.
Yeah, and you're a very eloquent speaker as well. So if anyone wants to see your talks, they're available on YouTube.
Oh, yes. I if you need a speaker, let me know.
And well, I don't think this time does justice to the depth that we could go into this topic. And you obviously know a lot about it. So I really hope we can get you on our channels soon again. So we'll work in that. And thank you so much for taking the time, and talk to you soon.
I'd love it. And thank you so much. This has been, it's like I could go for another couple hours.
We will in the future.